Hello and welcome along to HTML Basics with your host Robert Smith. In this part 2 of the box model video, I'm going to demonstrate again what we did in the first video. That was, we discovered that all the elements, let's go back to split view, all the elements, now in HTML a P tag's an element, an H tag, the tags are elements, the image tag is an element. All the elements are contained within a box, and that's called the box model. And what we did, we applied the box model to this H1 tag across the top here. We put, I think, 10 pixels of padding, which is the space between the actual content and the edge of this grey container. Then we put a border around the container like that, and then we put a margin to move it around a bit. So let's do the same thing with a paragraph tag. If I click on paragraph like that, let me go into design view, make sure so I can see it a bit better. You'll notice that any block level, I should say, tag, like a P tag or an H tag, they fill up the whole width of the page. If I drag that to the left, you'll notice that it just will take up whatever room is required, and as I drag it to the right, and that's called a block level element. In other words, it just wants to take up the whole area. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm going to create a rule to control this paragraph tag. So to do that, I'm going to go over here and click on plus for new CSS rule, like I always do. Again, we don't know about class IDs or compounds yet, but we will. We know about tags. Now we don't want the body tag. We'll just type in the P like that. We could have selected it from this drop-down menu, but it's much easier just to type in P. And the model.css over here, you'll see that's where we want it. That's the file that will contain all our CSS. And I'm going to click OK, and up comes our definition dialog box where we do all of our work in CSS. Okay, the first thing I want to do is make my box 200 pixels wide. So I'm going to click on box, and in width I'm going to type 200 pixels and apply. Now you'll notice that my P tag, even though it's a block element, only goes to 200 pixels wide and then stops and starts a new line because we told it to be that wide. Okay, all well and good. So let's go to our background so we can actually see the box that's containing the this P tag. If I go in there, I'm going to choose an orange. Maybe this orange is good. I'm going to click apply. Now you'll notice the background. It's hard up against the what's contained inside the element or inside the box like that. Now to get a bit of space between the edge of the box and the actual contents, we use something called padding. So if I go in here to my padding and I type in 10, let's say 10 pixels, and I'll click apply, you'll notice again we have 10 pixels here, 10 pixels there, 10 pixels and 10 pixels, which is great. And I can do those individually if I want to by deselecting this and just changing each of those. For example, I might want to change the left hand side to say 20 pixels. So type in 20 and apply. You'll notice I have 20 pixels now, but still 10 everywhere else. Okay, I'm going to click in 10 and apply. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to add a border around the outside. So it goes like this in the box model. We have the content, then the padding. Now if we click on border, I'm going to go for a solid border like this with a width of, again, 10 pixels. This is whatever you want it to be. And what color goes with orange? Well, I think orange goes with orange. Let's apply that. That one certainly doesn't. So let's try another one. Let's try maybe blue, a blue border. Okay, fine. Now our box model has kicked in. We have 10 pixels for border, 10 for padding, 200 for content. So now our box is 240 pixels wide because we have the same on the other side, much as we did with the H1 tag. Okay, now let's say you wanted to move these two elements apart, the H1 and the P tag. You want to put a bit of space in here between them. The obvious choice would be margin. Let's put a margin. So if I click on box like this, and I click on maybe a bottom, maybe a top margin on this P tag, we'll move it away from there. So let's try that. If I was to type in 10 pixels like that, and you would expect it, apply. You would expect, because this already has 10 pixels margin on the bottom, and you added 10 pixels to the top of this one, that they'd be 20 pixels apart. There's the trap for young players. What happens in the HTML CSS world is margins collapse when they meet up against each other, when they're hard up against each other. So what happens, the browser looks at the code, says, okay, there's two elements, they've both got margins, I'll just pick the biggest one. So watch this. For example, if I was to want to move this away, if I make that top margin of the p tag 12 pixels, watch what happens, watch closely. See how it moves 2 more pixels? Because it was the bigger of the two. Now, the top one had a 10 pixel margin, and this one has a 12 pixel margin. So the browser says, okay, we'll use this margin for the p tag, which is great. So you must know that. Keep that in mind whenever you're laying anything out, that margins, when they join up against each other, will collapse, and the biggest number will be used. So for example, if I was to make that 20 pixels and apply, you'll notice now they're 20 pixels apart, because this is the bigger of the two margins, this one having a 10 pixel margin. Again, that's called margin collapsing, and something you really should take into consideration when laying out pages. But more of that later, as long as we have introduced to it. Okay, now, but if I was to put a margin on the left-hand side of that, for example, if I was to put a 10 pixel margin on the left-hand side, you'll notice how it just moved across to 10 pixels there. Okay, that doesn't affect, because there's no margin to be up against. It's only these two it affects. Okay, let's apply that. Now let's have a look at an image. If I go back to my split view here, we've got an image tag here. Now it's a tag, or an element, you might want to call it. So let's write a CSS rule for that to see how that works. If I go over here, I want to click on plus for a new CSS rule. Again, we'll go for tag, and because we had our cursor there, it knows we want to style the image tag, and we want to put it in the box model.css. So click OK, like this. Now, if I was to put I don't really have to give it a size, because it already knows in the HTML that the box is 200 pixels wide, even though it's not in this rule definition box, like that. Okay, well, let's go do what I did before. Let's go to background and give it a background color of, say, this color here, or maybe that color there, and click apply. Now you'll notice nothing. You don't see anything. We have put a background in, the same as we did with these two elements here, but the fact that the image covers it totally, because it's 200 pixels wide by the same height, or the height of the element. So there is a background, but we just can't see it because the picture's on top of it. So to see that, let's go into our box and add a bit of padding, let's say 10 pixels all around, and apply. Aha, now we can see our background. Because our background is bigger than the element it contains, we can actually see it. Okay, let's just add a little bit more of, let's add a rule around it, or a border. So I'm going to go, this time I'm going to go for a solid border will do, and again, make it 10 pixels. And the color, we might just go for orange, just to keep it consistent. Let's apply that. And now we have a 10 pixel border around the outside. A bit like a picture frame, really, isn't it? So again, we don't have any margins on the bottom of this paragraph tag or the top. So if I wanted to move those two apart, I simply would apply a margin, a margin inside here like this to the top of that element, and I'll maybe make it 20 pixels so it moves it a fair way away. And as you can see, it's moved 20 pixels from that element there. Okay, in summary, what we've looked at, I'll click OK to accept that. And so what we've looked at is something called the box model in HTML and CSS, and what that simply means is that every element or everything that you put on an HTML page is inside a box, and that's what we use to lay it out. And we'll do that in future videos when we're using things like div tags and structural tags to actually lay things into columns and all that sort of thing. But just be aware of that. You must understand this box model, and that consists of the element itself, then the padding around the outside, which is this part here, the border, and then the margin. Okay, thanks for watching.